Okay, so we're going to look at how do we find a quadratic equation given a certain set of solutions. So we're going to be given a set of solutions, and essentially we'll be going backwards to find a quadratic equation that solves those solutions. And so these problems essentially have two types. One type is when the solutions are whole numbers or fractions. Here, essentially, when you go backwards, you're undoing how we solve them by factoring. And the other type is that the solutions have terms with roots or complex factors, and there we'll be undoing how we solved the ones using square roots. So if we identify that there's two different types of problems, then when we go to solve each of them, it'll be easier to know which way to undo it. So first we'll look at solutions that have whole numbers or fractions. And essentially, again, here we're undoing solving by factoring. So we're going to be given some solutions, so we're going to set x equal to those values. And then if there are fractions, we want to multiply through by the least common denominator to clear those fractions out. Then we'll set each of those equations equal to 0, and that gives us the factors. And then we multiply those factors and set the overall result to 0. You can kind of see this is the reverse of factoring. When you factor something, you factor it, then you set each of the factors equal to 0, skip this step on the fractions, and then you solve those equations. Okay, so let's look at an example. First example does not have fractions. It says find a quadratic equation with the following solutions. X equals -2 and x equals 5. So I come over here, I guess this should be an or. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this guy. X equals -2 or x equals 5. That's step 1, setting x equal to the solutions. Step 2, there are no fractions, so we're going to skip that. Step 3, we need to set these equal to 0. So add 2 to both sides here. X plus 2 equals 0. Subtract 5 on this one, or x minus 5 equals 0. And then these are now my factors. So I can take those factors, maybe throw them in parentheses, and then we just take those factors and multiply them and set that result equal to 0. So the two factors we're talking about are x plus 2 and x minus 5. And actually this would be a solution, a quadratic equation with those two solutions, but they generally want us to simplify this out or multiply it out. So we would get x squared minus 5x plus 2x minus 10, again, equals 0. And combining like terms, x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. And that is a quadratic equation. Let's undo that. That is a quadratic equation with solutions x equals -2 or x equals 5. You know, an interesting thing about this, these are not unique solutions. I could take this equation and multiply everything by 2 and get, 2x squared minus 6x, minus 20 equals 0. And that would also have the same two solutions. We don't need to do this. I mean, I could also multiply everything in the first equation by, a half and get 1/2 x squared minus 3/2 x minus 5 equals 0. And you could see there actually are infinitely many quadratic equations that have the same two solutions. So we just need to find one. So we take our solutions, we set them equal to 0. We multiply that. Gives us the factors, we multiply them out, set the result equal to 0, and we're done. How does this get a little harder? We have a set of solutions that involve fractions. So again, step one is just to set y equal to these values. This is already done for us, but sometimes it won't be. So it will be for all of us on homework, but just in general. Again, that should be an or. Y equals 3/4 or y equals 2/5. That's done. Step two, I need to multiply through by the LCD over 1 each equation. So they both have a separate least common denominator. The one on the left has the LCD of 4. So just multiply both sides by 4 over 1. The one on the right has an LCD of 5. So multiply both sides by 5 over 1. What this will do is cancel those fractions out. So we'll get 4y equals 3, or 5y equals 2. Now we need to set these guys equal to 0. So the first equation, subtract 3. The second equation, subtract 2. This gives me my factors. So I need to take those factors and multiply them, set the result equal to 0. So we got 4y minus 3 times 5y minus 2. We need to FOIL this out. I mean, this actually is a solution, right? This is a quadratic equation who has those two values as solutions, but our homework wants us to multiply this out and simplify it. So we'll get 20y squared, and then I've got a minus 8y and a minus 15y. Combining those gives us a minus 23y, and then plus 6 equals 0. And that is a solution, a quadratic equation, which has the values y equals 3/4 and y equals 2/5 as solutions. If you need to grab this, go ahead and pause it. Otherwise, I'm just going to go back to the start and recap the steps. So we go back, and we've looked at finding quadratic equations whose solutions are, whole numbers or fractions. And I guess technically I should say they're integers or fractions. That's okay. And that process involves 4 steps: setting x equal to those solutions, multiplying each equation by its LCD to clear the fractions, set each equation to 0, which gives us the factors, and then multiply those factors out and set the result equal to 0. I'm going to come back and look at the second type of problems, solutions that have terms with roots or complex factors.